All right, everybody. So we've got week one is down, and God, what the crazy thing is, like we spend months, I guess years, talking about like the tiniest details in the Depp case, and now because of trial, like I feel like we're just deluged with stuff. I don't even know where to start with everything that happened this week. I'm here with Andrea Burkhart, one of my favorite guests. A lot of you love her, criminal lawyer. Has been talking about a lot about the Depp and Heard trial for has been talking about the Depp Heard situation for a long time. And I guess let's just get right to it. So Andrea, do you have some things in particular that you want to talk about?
Well, I mean, like everybody, it's been a long week. There's been a lot. But I think I would rather start at just the 10,000-foot view, to just remind people of where we are in the process and hopefully to shed a little bit of perspective on it. We are, about 15% of the way into this trial. There is still a massive amount to come. I have seen a lot of anxiety and discomfort over sort of where things are at on a day-by-day basis. And for people who, haven't been through big trials like this, that is going to be a very anxiety-producing way to follow this process. And so I just want to do what I can to encourage people to remember this is a long game. We have only barely gotten started. There are a lot of rapids still to ride.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. Because I think that I saw your metaphor the other day about what did you liken this to? I was thinking of like a football game where
I said the Tour de France.
Oh yeah. So how is it like the Tour de France? Explain that.
Well, the Tour de France is super long. It's like 3 weeks or something like that. It's made up of all of the different stages, and I'm pretty sure nobody has ever won every single stage in the Tour de France. Like that's just not how it is set up to go. It's basically over a period of time who can accumulate, the best performances in all of these different stages as a whole. And so it's so much like that in a trial, because obviously there are bad things about Johnny Depp that are going to come out, and there are going to be, witnesses who are stronger and weaker than other witnesses. And so expecting Johnny Depp to win every single stage of this trial and for it to be like a big victory party every day, it's just not realistic. You're setting yourself up for disappointment if that's how you expect the trial to go. So it's just important to bear that in mind. This is an incremental process. My view so far, I thought the week went well for Johnny. He is on schedule. He's on track. He has gotten a lot of good information out in front of the jury already. Isaac, of course, was fantastic, made a wonderful impression on them. So, there have been things that, are negatives for him, but that is a given in this case. Where we're sitting right now, from my view, he is absolutely going in the right direction.
Well, that's great to hear. And I agreed. I thought it was overall really positive. I wasn't impressed, like I told people, I wasn't in my video that earlier, I wasn't impressed with his team's performance the first day. I know there are differing opinions on that. I felt like it was lackluster. Wasn't impressed with Christy, but I thought Isaac was amazing, really turned things around. And then even yesterday, I know that there was that problem with Gina Deuters getting dismissed and everything. But I thought on the whole, did you think yesterday was a positive day for Johnny, even with the marriage therapist saying that unfortunate thing about mutual abuse?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, that's the thing to remember is there's so many moving pieces in the trial. They have set up that piece, that mutual abuse, piece of her testimony to be absolutely knocked down by the people who were there and who saw what was going on and who had much more of an intimate relationship with both of these people. They very successfully got out that, you know, to the extent she thought Johnny was abusive, it was just because Amber told her that.
Right.
So they did a very good job of setting that up to be knocked down as the trial continues.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say one thing too about the therapist. You know, as someone who, I don't know if I should say it or not, but I've been through a lot of therapy in my life. I'm not sure if any of it's actually worked, but I've been through a lot of therapy in my life. My mom's a counselor. My dad was a counselor. He was a narcissist counselor, so that's kind of interesting. Like, he was a narcissist, but anyway, but a lot of experience with this. And I guess what I want to say is, a therapist is always going to get a very distorted view of the situation based on whomever that therapist is primarily seeing. Wasn't Amber Heard primarily her client?
Well, you know, she seemed to be kind of fuzzy about that. I mean, it certainly sounded like when she was talking about the actual sessions and who was there and who she worked with, that there was more involvement, you know, by Amber individually, certainly than there was by Johnny individually. And it appears that Amber is the one who selected this therapist in the first place. You know, something that somebody said that I'm going to ask you about, because I don't actually know, was a comment that therapists are basically taught and trained not to challenge their patients, that like somehow that's not therapeutic or something. And is that true? Because if that is true, I find that absolutely shocking. Like, that is kind of the heart of enabling to me, is not challenging somebody on their obvious bullshit. I mean, I can see like holding back and not, you know, passing judgment or something like that, but literally not challenging people. Is that true?
I wouldn't put it, well, first of all, I mean, there's many different approaches to therapy. And so you talk to a different therapist, you're going to get a different perspective, right? You know that. But I would not put it that way. I would say that's a big overstatement. The way I would put it is that as I understand it, if a therapist has a patient that, say, they suspect has a personality disorder, or they're really troubled, or they're clearly coming from out in left field, the therapist is not supposed to say, generally speaking, like, you're wrong. They'll say things like, well, do you know, like, let's say the therapist was trying to help Amber with her temper. Instead of saying, you know, hey, you've got a really messed up temper and you just stop beating up your husband, it'd be something more like, you know, well, tell me, you know, what triggers you and how do you think that you might better deal with this? Or so it's more about, I would say, empathizing initially, so that then the therapist can come in and in more subtle, non-threatening ways help the person to face the reality of what they're doing. So like in therapy that I've had, the way that the therapist would challenge me would not be to say you're wrong, but would be to ask questions that would sort of inherently lead to some reflection, or to maybe occasionally make an offhand comment like, well, your husband doesn't sound so bad to me. I mean, look at this or that. But in terms of the therapist is not going to tell Amber Heard, you have a personality disorder, you're really messed up, and you're abusing your husband. That's not going to happen.
That's fair. That makes sense. And that's actually very reassuring to me.
Yeah. But no, you're not supposed to just feed your patient's delusions. In fact, that's one of the, unfortunately, that is one of the problematic side effects of some therapy, is that if it's not done well, then the patient can come out of it actually having felt like reinforced in their delusions. And in fact, that's a plot line at the last season of The Sopranos, when Tony Soprano's therapist fires him because she realizes that all she's been doing is enabling him for years. So I don't know.
I remember that. Well, and it's funny that you say that, because, you know, I'm sure I'm not the only one who got away with this overwhelming impression of this therapist that, you know, she's presenting herself in, you know, a certain kind of fashion as, you know, having a lot of insight and things like that. But when you look at what she's actually reporting, it really looks like she just got completely played. that all of this was Amber said, and no, real corroboration. Okay, might have seen a couple of bruises under her eyes, but she won't even call them bruises. It's just darkening, like bags under your eyes you might get when you're hungover. Like it just it didn't come off, I thought, as appearing very well informed.
Well, it might have been in Amber Heard's interest to not choose a very bright therapist. I mean, I don't know if this woman is, I know Christian Carino contacted her and said, my best friend, Amber, can you help her out? So, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is just like there are bad teachers and bad lawyers and there are bad therapists. So I can't say exactly this woman, but therapists do get snowed by their patients a lot.
Sure.
And
they're
that's
dealing with delusion. That's
right.
Denial. That's the entire point.
Right. And they're dealing with, and they can only deal with that person's subjectivity. Now, when Johnny Depp comes into the room, then there's another person, another perspective. Mm-hmm. But if she's the feeling that I got was that she was primarily like dealing with Amber or communicating with Amber more than Johnny. And maybe that's just because Amber was running like a roughshod over the conversation. Like she said, she's like a jackhammer. Yeah. But whoever dominates in a therapy session, it's very easy to dominate a therapy session, especially if the therapist is more sort of like laid back and as you put it, enabling. So you definitely I've known a couple of people in my life who have personality disorders, and they went to a therapist for help, and they ended up convincing the therapist that everybody else in their life was the problem. Right? So,
yeah.
Did you think on the whole that witness was, because of that mutually abusive thing, did do a bit of damage? Or do you think that the recovery and the questions that Johnny's team asked that basically settled that more in Johnny's favor?
Oh, I still put this witness in Johnny's court as far as the overall benefit. I mean, it's clear that Amber has already acknowledged so much of what she denied under oath in the United Kingdom, in her depositions and her statements and her TRO stuff. That she was the initiator, and that's what she did. And we already know from Elaine's opening statement that she's still going to go down the road of, I only ever hit Johnny this one time when I was defending my sister. And so that has just been completely undermined by Dr. Anderson. I'm alone here.
What you were saying, the last thing? We're good now.
I sort of forgot what it was.
We're talking about therapists, and it was a good day for Johnny Depp. He still came out generally.
I mean, overall, I put the net from Dr. Anderson's testimony in Johnny's corner. He was able to elicit a substantial amount of information that is going to rebut where we already know Amber is going. We heard from Elaine's opening statement that she's still sticking with this. I only ever hit Johnny one time in self-defense. But she said in her TRO application, in her declaration in Virginia, in her UK witness statements, her UK testimony, and now, presumably in the testimony here too, that, Johnny was the violent one, and she was all submissive and never fought back. And Dr. Anderson has just completely taken the air out of that entire approach. So, and I mean, if this is the friendliest therapist they have for Amber, that's going to be a real problem.
Yeah, considering that the woman described all of these situations where Johnny Depp was basically boxed in, I mean, I guess literally, but boxed in by Amber Heard, like he would try to escape the fights and then she would just stay on him. I mean, it seems like under those conditions, the concept of being mutually abusive doesn't work to me. When one person is instigating and is preventing the other person from leaving, is basically kind of beating up on the other person, So I agree with you. I thought on the whole, it was helpful. The unfortunate thing is that the media is still mostly stacked in Amber's favor. So it was very unfortunate, some of the headlines that came out of that therapist testimony. Like I saw People magazine one of their big stories said, therapist said relationship was mutually abusive. I hate that that's going to be like the thing that a lot of people are going to hit on, but whatever. It's like you said, it's a long process, and there's going to be good points and bad points.
There's going to be a lot for everybody to cherry pick, including,
yeah.
those great bastions of legal journalism, People Magazine.
That's true. So, okay. So, what about Kate James? Did you think that I know that there was that prickly cross-examination that they started with, because it was a recorded deposition, which kind of threw me off. But anyway, I know that she had that kind of prickly cross-examination, but by Amber's lawyer. But did you think that on the whole, Kate James was very helpful?
Oh, I loved Kate James. I thought she did fantastic. My haughty Australian queen. Like she's
the one who originally changed your mind, or really like made you see the light on the situation, right? When you read her testimony.
She was the one, it was her and Tara Roberts. When I first read their witness statements for the UK, that just, turned my whole head 180 degrees on my view of this case. Just, what she has to say about how Amber treats people is so incredibly shocking. I thought, I saw a lot of people concerned that maybe she was going to put off the jury because of her haughty Australian queen demeanor. But personally, I found it very effective. I thought that was a great way to handle Rottenborn, because he himself is one of these kind of smarmy, self-aggrandizing lawyer approaches. I meant to look up his background because I'm like 90% sure he's been a prosecutor at some point of his career. I see this attitude all the time. And so we saw, how Christie tried to handle that in a much more nice and placating kind of way. And I didn't find that very effective. He was able to, really kind of get under her skin and make those points. And Kate was just absolutely not having it, and really took a lot of the oomph out of what he was trying to accomplish in that deposition.
I thought it was really effective when she said that Amber spit in her face when she asked for a raise, because I don't think that spitting, that's not the type of thing that I would generally make up, like would even think to make up. Like if I were complaining about how someone was real bitchy when I asked them for a raise, I'd say, oh, she cussed at me. She told me to get the fuck out of there or whatever. But like spitting is it is so outside of like my experience, like a woman spitting at another one. Like to me, that is just, I don't think I've ever seen that except maybe on Jerry Springer or something back in the day. And so to me, when she said that, it seemed really truthful. It didn't seem like something that you would necessarily make up. And it was such a picture of like Amber as this like rabid animal. Like you could just, I put the Exorcist picture of on my Twitter of Linda Blair vomiting. But seriously though, like the mental image of Amber spitting in someone's face because they asked for a raise.
Well, and I think it's important because it gets us out of this framework of looking at Amber as just another Hollywood diva. She's demanding, she's difficult. She maybe raises her voice from time to time when she shouldn't. She treats people as her inferiors. No, she spit in somebody's fucking face. Okay, like she is an abusive person. It just it paints the picture in a way that I think we hadn't seen so far.
You can be arrested and charged with assault for spitting in someone's face. I mean, Marilyn Manson is dealing with some charges in, God, is it Massachusetts, from spitting on a camera person at a concert.
Yeah,
so
with felony charges for people spitting on the cops when they get arrested.
Oh, really? Okay. Wow. So what else? Anything else? Other things you thought were interesting?
Well, let's talk about Gina. Because that was a whole thing. I mean, obviously didn't go the way that Johnny would have maybe wanted that to go. But it's another one of those situations where I think there's a very good possibility that when we are looking back on what happened in this first week, in the later days of the trial, we're going to see how some of the seeds have been planted early on. And so I want to start by telling a little story about the second trial I ever did, where you learn that maybe asking the judge for something isn't necessarily what you want. And it was just a case where I had a pretty good jury. It's a DUI charge. And the prosecutor does something stupid during part of his cross-examination. I object. The judge asked me, do you want a mistrial? I said, yes. He gives me my mistrial. And when we go back to retry it, we don't have anywhere near as good a jury as we had the first time. And I realized kind of in hindsight, the judge maybe kind of baited me into making that request that wasn't potentially really in my interest. Like I knew I had a good jury. I should have stuck with what I had. And so I think that there is a very good possibility that Amber's team has now gotten Judge Azkarate to draw a line in the sand when it comes to contempt of court. And so I do want to be clear that what Gina apparently did is contempt of court. There's an exclusion order. The witnesses are not supposed to be, paying attention to the testimony and the evidence that's coming out in this trial. So Judge A has now been asked to have zero tolerance for that, and she has given that. That just may have the potential to backfire as these things develop, because we're seeing some fishy business in the courtroom. But the standard has now been set, and they asked her to set that standard. So should it happen that the tide turns and that standard now gets applied to them, it's going to be easier for Judge A to make that call than it would have been had they not made a big stink out of Gina, because there's so much pressure now to be even-handed. Getting that hurdle cleared initially is really the hard step. So now Judge A has cleared it. Now contempt is fair game. So people are really going to need to mind their P's and Q's.
Yeah. Did you? And I didn't get a chance to watch Gina's testimony before she got kicked off or kicked out or whatever. How did she get some blows in before she was dismissed?
I was having a hard time, honestly, really seeing what Gina was there for. Of course, we don't know what she didn't get to say, but the main thing that she had said that landed, I thought, was simply that she has used arnica cream before. And so she knows that when you put on arnica cream, it's not a cover up. It doesn't make the bruise go away instantly. It's like a long-term homeopathic treatment thing. So it's not like they're not going to be able to get that from other people. I mean, for heaven's sakes, there's stylists and makeup artists and stuff like that on these witness lists. So, Gina was another person who really didn't see anything. Amber had kind of treated her snotty because, that's what Amber does. But beyond that, I didn't see that she was a real value add for their case. So I think it's a situation where, at the end of the day, it may not end up being a bad thing at all, what happened.
Let me ask you something just as a general legal question while we're on the topic. I've always kind of found it a bit of a joke when a judge says to a jury, okay, disregard that testimony, it's struck from the record. I mean, it's in their head. So what does that really mean in a legal sense? Like what's the real ramification of striking testimony? Because it's not going to strike from their head.
Of course, you can't unring the bell. That is a very, very well acknowledged idea. What it really means from a legal standpoint is you can't rely on it in deliberations. So when they're back there having their arguments, if somebody is raising this information that's been stricken and they won't come off of that, there's an argument to be made that that's misconduct. They're not following the instructions of the judge. So that is really the only effect. It can't be used to sway the deliberations.
Okay, and then let's see what else. Were there other things? I have a few things, but were there other things you wanted to talk about?
Oh, let's go with yours.
Okay, well, so this might seem like a trivial thing, but I was watching Legal Bites. I really like that woman. What's her name?
Elite.
What?
Alita.
Alita. Okay, yeah. And I'm going to go on her show next week. But I was watching her coverage. I like them. But they were talking about they noticed the fact that Amber Heard has dressed very severely all week. And as in terms of fashion choices, I love a very severe looking suit. I love black. Like, I think she looks great if she were going like, on a photo shoot or something. But she looks, I mean, people were saying that she looked like one day she looked like a Gestapo officer and like very
the gold.
And so I just wonder, like, every single day she looks mean. What is that? What do you think that's about? What and is that good for her?
I mean, it's a good question. It's obviously a very different strategy than her UK strategy. I have a couple thoughts about it. One, to be frank, she does look fairly bloated. If she has the severe alcohol problems that we kind of have been led to think that she does, that affects your liver. That can really affect so like when you see her at some of the angles, even with these big jackets on that she's swimming in, you can clearly see, she's probably a little bit bigger than she was at the time of the UK, certainly, from during the time of the marriage. So some of that may be just simple vanity, thinking that she's going to mask her size.
Would there be a reason, a good strategic reason for her to want to look mean? Is that like to intimidate people, or like assuming that it's not just a size thing?
Yeah.
Do you know any reason? Someone said maybe she was trying to project this sort of like feminist toughness, like don't mess with me, but that's not really like the image they're wanting for this trial. They want her to seem like weak and pathetic, right?
Yeah. I mean, it just isn't. It's very consistent with her heroic victim, character that she's trying to depict. It's just that that's a hard sell on a jury. Anytime that you're sort of deliberately flaunting in the jury's face that you're not going to fit their expectations. You're not going to be a stereotypically feminine woman. You're going to assert yourself in this masculine way. That's a high risk type of proposition. Juries are normal people. They expect to see certain things, and it's not like they're automatically going to hate you if you don't meet their expectations, but they are going to notice that, and they are going to wonder about that. It's going to be something that stands out, that they're going to have to reconcile with all of the other information that they're giving about this people. And it's not necessary. It's one of those things that she didn't have to choose to send this signal. So right. Why she's doing that, I really don't know. I don't know her thought process behind it. She could very well at this point have just decided, fuck it, I'm going all in on, like you said, my feminist warrior.
I'm woman, hear me roar.
Yeah. And fuck what the jury thinks, it's about getting me on the magazine covers and on the Twitter posts and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't have any great insight into her style choices.
As far as the way she looks too, and I have to say that I was surprised to see. I'm trying to think of a way to say this where it doesn't sound like I'm being really mean, but I'm surprised to see her. Look, she's still an attractive woman. She's attractive by most people's standards, but she didn't look good, and I was surprised to see like the circles under her eyes and some of the wrinkles and all of that, just because that stuff is so easy to fix. If you have a good plastic surgeon or dermatologist, and we know that she's I was going to say, we know that she's gotten plastic surgery and stuff before, but I'm wondering I'm wondering if like the money is running kind of low or something, like she can't afford to it just seems strange to me. These dark circles and the bags and the wrinkles and all that, like you can get stuff like that fixed. So I don't know.
I mean, yes, but you can only outrun the alcohol for so long. I mean, I'm serious. She's 35 years old. Like that in and of itself, you know, it's slowing down. And when you add the alcohol on top of that, people do not understand and appreciate how much damage that does to a
well, she smokes cigarettes too, right?
I don't know if she smokes. We've seen her smoking. I don't know if she's a regular smoker. I don't think she smokes anything like Johnny does.
Yeah. Well, but I think you're right about the alcohol. You know, I've known some women who were pretty hardcore alcoholics, and it's interesting. They looked good until they hit their mid-30s, and then you started to see the same stuff with the puffiness and the bags and the tired, you know, loose skin, gray skin, and all of that. So, and I'm not taking any great delight in that. I'm just saying I was surprised to see her, especially that first day. She looks like she was hungover that first day. So, I mean, that looked like someone who was. She looked better the second day, but that first day, she was pretty hungover.
Yeah.
Do you think that, what was all that of when they were, I don't know what I was trying to say. Okay, in Kate James' testimony, when under cross, they asked her if she had asked Johnny for a place to live. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
Does that make her look bad, or was that just kind of like, meh, whatever?
I mean, I didn't put any great weight on it. They obviously have a big part of their strategy to try to draw out this notion that Johnny's witnesses are all partial. They're not objective. They all have an interest in furthering his case. And so this is just one more line of attack, I think, along those lines. But it doesn't seem like a particularly powerful one to me. I mean, she's a woman with a young child who, you know, is just unceremoniously shit-canned with no notice. Right. It doesn't seem that odd to me that she would be looking for help from somebody who might be empathetic to her, you know, that the fact that Johnny would even consider, you know, helping her, and that she would consider him the type of person to go to for help may not really be the point that they were trying to make with that question.
Well, and he didn't give her anything. She says she didn't get residence from him. Speaking of Johnny helping out people, we talked just a little bit about Isaac Baruch. I know he was an amazing witness, and you thought so too. And what I was surprised by, and you can tell me your opinion on this, I was really shocked at how bad Elaine's cross was, and how she let him go on at various points, specifically when, you know, he went on that tear about, she said, "You're angry at Amber Heard." He's like, "Angry?" He's like, "Yeah, you mean about the fake pictures and the fake narrative and the domestic violence extortion and all of that. Yeah, I'm angry." And Elaine's just kind of over there like almost nodding, like, yes. I thought it was really weird. And then also, before you comment, I was also surprised, speaking of the strategy they used with Kate James, I was surprised that they did not, in the cross, they didn't lean harder into the idea that Isaac Baruch sounds like he's completely financially dependent on Johnny, and has been for a long time. And to me, that would have been something I would have hit on. I would have asked, "Mr. Baruch, where are you currently living? Isn't it true that Johnny owns the place that you're currently living? How much money is Johnny still giving you?" Like, why didn't they ask any of those things?
Well, I think they did ask him if he's still living in Johnny in the same house, Johnny's house. And
I feel like you're right. I feel like they could have just antagonized him or pushed it hard. It just seemed very strange that some of the things that Elaine chose to focus on, and then other things that I felt like would have been more of a hit, she's kind of, you know.
Yeah. Well, Elaine does not have any fucking clue what she's doing. I mean, that's really just the bottom line. That cross-examination, if the opening statement didn't convince you that Elaine does not have a massive amount of trial experience, that cross-examination should have made the point absolutely crystal clear. Because from a technical standpoint, there's a number of things that you just learn very quickly that you never do on cross-examination. Everybody knows you don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. And the second is that you never invite somebody to explain themselves on cross-examination. You are there to put words in their mouth. She needs to learn from Ben Rottenborn, because even though his attitude and his smarm is off-putting, his technique is fantastic. That is exactly what cross-examination is for. If Elaine is going to ask some dumbass, stupid question, like what is even the point of this question? Were you angry? Like, that's the question you don't ask. See, that's the other thing that people who don't have a lot of experience with cross-examination, they don't get. You don't have to put the period at the end of the sentence in your cross-examination. The jury is capable of doing that for themselves. And if you demonstrate through your other questions, so you told Ms. Heard you didn't want to ever speak to her again, and you've remained close with Johnny Depp, and here you are years later testifying as a witness on his behalf. You've made the point that he's angry at Amber. You don't have to fucking ask him. And so that it's just such an own goal, because it invited him to give that entire explanation. The best part of that whole exchange, honestly, was afterwards when, she and Judge A had, this little exchange on the bench, and she's like, I didn't expect him to go off on this big rant. And Judge A's like, well, you asked the question. And that's exactly the case. You have to have a point on cross-examination. You have to know what you're getting at. You have to know how to get to it. And you have to be disciplined. And Elaine just lacks these skills. And boy, did it come back to bite her.
Why do you think she was hired? If her specialty is not trial law, what is she doing that's really helpful for Amber Heard?
Well, she was very aggressive in the discovery litigation. Somebody asked me, this is going to sound super mean, but I don't even fucking care at this point. Elaine's style, she is like a little fucking ankle biting rat dog. Okay. She is an annoyance. And the only thing that gives her any success is the fact that other people are too kind-hearted to fucking kick her and get her off. That's what makes her successful, is that she annoys people to death. So that's a very effective pretrial litigation strategy. If you want somebody who's going to try to bury you in paperwork, bury you in legal fees, she's a great lawyer. But I think, we're coming to see that set of skills does not translate whatsoever into being an effective trial advocate.
Do you think that Amber, and of course, what do we know what's going on in her mind, but how do you think she's feeling at the end of this week? Or let me put it this way, if you were in Amber's position, how would you be feeling at the end of this week?
Well, I think you pointed out what a difference you can already see in Amber's attitude from, the UK trial versus this trial. Alita's also got another guy on her channel, and now I'm blanking on his name, but he's a body language guy, and he's given some interesting commentary on what he's seen, and he made some comments about Amber's appearance as well, and how his impression is that this is the face of somebody who is realizing that she is not as loved as she thought she was, and so I think we may be seeing this story of Amber Heard going into the UK believing that she was going to tell this story and she was going to be crowned as the heroic victim, and that everyone would love her and respect her and admire her for what she did. And the reality has been the polar opposite of that. So I think that has shaken her, her confidence quite a bit. And so now going into this trial, she already knows that what she tried in the UK didn't work, but she's kind of stuck with it. So she knows that she is hated. She knows that people do not respect her for telling these kinds of stories. And yeah, that's got to be pretty hard for her to sit there, you know, with the camera on her for 6 weeks, knowing that.
Honestly, like, I cannot imagine too many forms of emotional torture that would be much worse. I mean, I can imagine something, but I mean, it's pretty bad to have to sit there for weeks. I mean, it's already kind of excruciating sitting in a trial anyway. No matter how interesting it is, it's still kind of excruciating, or at least I find it to be, right? Even with the interesting witnesses, I'm still kind of like, okay, are we done yet? But I can't imagine if I was sitting there, basically it's like you're having to like sit there for a 6-week funeral of yourself, right? Like basically, like she has to sit there through all of this tediousness, and also knowing that there's a very good likelihood this is going to totally take her down. And so to me, like, that's just, every moment has got to be excruciating to her.
Well, I think it is, and the other side of that too is that when it comes to people like this, you know, talking about the personality disorders and the aggressiveness, the callousness, they survive on the goodwill of other people. If it's not for the fact that people feel sorry for her, you know, she would have been metaphorically pilloried a long time ago. But they're very good at stoking the sympathy and making themselves look like the victim. And so this is kind of just part of that as well. You know, if poor Amber, you know, if that becomes the narrative, that poor Amber has to sit here and hear all of these, you know, bad things, that's just another manipulative way of excusing her bullshit.
Well, I see what you're saying. If she wants people to feel that way, though, she needs to stop wearing the Gestapo suits, because that's because it's like every time I look at her and there's a part of me, there's still, you know, there's a small part of me that feels sorry for her, because I feel sorry for people who have personality disorders. I mean, they didn't make themselves that way. And I'm not saying she's, you know, again, I'm not getting to a whole discussion of culpability, but I'm just saying, like, there's a part of me, I look at her, I'm like, damn, that's got to suck. But then I see her in that mean looking uniform and all of them just,
yeah. No, I mean, we know that she's suffering, and for empathetic people, they're going to suffer with her, and they're going to have this impulse to want to help her and to want to fix her. And that's not a bad thing by any means. Don't get me wrong. It's just, that ain't what the trial game is about. Okay. The trial game is not an empathy game.
right.
Gina, sweet flower as she is, this was not her fucking game. Okay. And that's, I think, part of why Isaac made such the impression that he did, because he brought a little more welcome to the jungle to his presentation than we've seen from him.
He did. He did. And it was interesting because he had this sort of it kind of came off almost initially as kind of this sort of bumbling, no offense to him, but just a little bit sort of bumbling, kind of clueless, like just sort of character, right? And I was and so you're kind of like off guard, right? You're thrown off your guard a little bit. You're like, well, this will be funny, or this will be interesting. And then he just comes in with some of those zingers, you know, and I was like, well, this guy, it's like crazy like a fox or something.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and then let's see, what was something else I was going to ask. And you said you thought it was a pretty good week for Johnny Depp. How do you think? So you think Johnny Depp's lawyers are pleased with how things are going? Fairly.
Well, I do. I mean, the thing, you know, with a trial like this, it's so massively stressful, as everybody is now kind of getting to experience by following it. And there's so many opportunities to second guess yourself. And if you're going to second guess yourself and the plan that you had, the strategy that you developed, you're not going to be successful long-term as a trial lawyer. We've gotten a lot better sense of who these people are now, just by being able to see them and how they present things. I have a lot different impression of Ben than I would have had, you know, just based on reading his writing. Ben comes off as somebody who is very deliberate, very even-keeled, And I really can't overstate how much of a benefit, that kind of characteristic is in a setting like this, where again, we're in the rapids. Like you're going to hit some holes, you're going to hit some snags, you might flip and need to right the ship. And so to have somebody who is not, going to get caught up in the kind of hair on fire mentality that is so easy to fall into on a day-to-day basis, that is going to be a huge asset for Johnny's team. So yeah, I think Ben has got a lot of good attributes that fit this trial. He's obviously got a style of his own. He's very different in his approach from Rottenborn. Rottenborn is just a very stereotypical litigator. He's exactly what you expect to see. He's seems to be pretty competent. He's not the best ever, but he's not Elaine, so,
yeah.
but Ben is a high road. He's a high road practitioner. And, that seems to be important to him to be a leader in the process, not necessarily to, make it all about outrage or breathing fire or, getting your scoring your points and things like that. So I think he's got a bigger plan. We're seeing it unfold. It's a long game. So, we're still early. We're not going to see how all these things fit together until later on. But he looks to me like he's on track.
Cool.
What do you think of Ben?
Well, I didn't like his performance the first day in the opening statement. I told you that I felt like I certainly saw where Elaine rambled a lot, but I was really put off by, it seemed like in their opening statements, both Ben and to an extent, Camille, they seemed nervous. And I totally understand that, but it was just a little bit off-putting. I would just expect, like, I don't know a lot about the legal system. I've not been in trials or anything, but I remember the OJ trial, and it just seemed like I expected better oratory skills out of someone who's being paid millions of dollars. But then again, like you said, he's been a kind of a steady presence this week in the trial, and maybe putting on some flashy, really engaging production in terms of oratory is just not his strong point. His strong point is doing this other kind of legal work. So I'm feeling better about him than I did that first day. The first day I was just like, I'm just thinking like, damn, you want to come out of the gate like that. And he just seemed a little sort of like anxious and timid. But again, what do I know? I've just watched the OJ trial. That's the extent, that circus was the extent of my experience.
I think part of that was just a factor of the decision that both of Johnny's lawyers made to read their opening statements versus Amber's lawyers both chose to speak off the cuff. And I'm a speak off the cuff lawyer, myself when I do an opening and when I do a closing. What I do is I have an outline, so I know that there are specific things I want to go through. There's kind of an order in which I want to do it. But the way for me to be able to get that connection with what it is that I'm talking about is, to talk about it as I remember it, as I felt it, as it made an impression on me, as I saw it make an impression on the jury. And you lose that when you're basically following a script. It's a strategic.
There's a little bit of a connection. I think but then again, I'm looking very sort of single-mindedly at oratory, and I'm not seeing the other stuff, like all the legal work and all the intellectual work that goes into things. So I definitely felt a lot better after second day of testimony, second day of testimony, Isaac Baruch, and I felt good since then. I didn't see Gina getting kicked out as really a big thing either.
Yeah. And we should definitely talk about kind of what's going on with this background stuff. I don't know if you saw the New York Post article that came out about the two Johnny Depp supporters that got ejected from the courtroom.
No, tell me about that. I saw something about that on Twitter, but like I said, I wasn't paying attention much at the end of yesterday.
Yeah,
so what happened?
Well, Well, as the New York Post has reported it, their tweets were regarded as threatening to Amber Heard. There's kind of some speculation that Eve Barlow is there in the courtroom trying to kind of create some chaos, looking up old tweets and things like that to try to get people excluded.
Do we know who was ejected? Their names?
It was Depley Hallows and Izzy. I can't remember. She's got some numbers in her handle. So they're two long term. I mean, Depley Hallows is like old OG. She is OG, Depp supporter. And so yeah, they had made some tweets that I don't know, not ideal, not the best tweets ever.
When you tweet every day about a case for like years, you're gonna have some stuff that's
and the one that caught the attention apparently and justified this exclusion was from 2016. Okay, it's been 6 years and probably 10,000 tweets, since then. So
why would that person, okay, what's the legal rationale for excluding someone for tweets that are not made from court? Like, I don't understand.
Well, it's a very good question. And so this is something I've done a little bit of research on. I'm actually going to go live with Christina Pickles on Sunday, and I'm going to talk to her a lot about that because, she's very interested in this issue, these people. So I don't know exactly what the judge is thinking. I can tell you that, the ostensible issue is that they, security concerns. The extent to which that can be justified, is a little bit more up in the air.
So the idea would be that having these two people who tweeted some extreme stuff could make them a threat to Amber Heard, like they might hurt her or something.
I mean, that seems to be the justification. And obviously, like I'm saying,
she's just going to spit in their face and punch him. Nobody's a threat to Amber Heard. She can fight off everybody in that courtroom at once, I bet.
And again, if this is based on a 2016 tweet, this is hardly the most imminent, kind of threat that we've ever seen. So there are definitely some concerns about that. But the real point I want to make about it is that this is 100% part of Amber's game. I'm seeing a lot of people on the social media, get very upset about this. They really want Johnny's team to address this. They want the judge to address it. They want Eve to get kicked out of the courtroom, et cetera, et cetera. And that is the entire goal. When I said Eve is in there to stir chaos, that is her strategy. That is her tactic, because they would love nothing better than for Johnny's team to take their eye off of this trial and worry about what's going on in the audience. That is not in Johnny's interest to do that. It's not in their team's interest to do that. And while I absolutely am concerned about these rulings, and I'm concerned for these people who are just trying to exercise their fucking constitutional right to attend this trial, they're going to need to advocate for themselves here. It's not a good idea to be putting pressure on Johnny's team to get distracted by all of this, because at the end of the day, it's not going to have anything to do with the jury's verdict.
Well, that's really interesting. That's great stuff. I don't think I have anything else. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about? That's all really great stuff. I had one question about Manson, but I want to finish up with the Depp. If there's anything else that you have there.
I talked on my Twitter about the opening statements and just the different approach that we saw, and how there is a risk with the approach that Elaine took, and Ben as well, of really overcommitting compared to what they're actually going to be able to show to the jury. They made a lot of claims that they're going to have a hard time backing up. So that again, it's a short-term strategy. It reminds me of when you're playing a poker game I don't know if you play poker at all, play Hold'em. So there's different strategies for how to bet depending on where you are in the game. And it's very common in the early game, you have your two cards. That's your whole cards. And then everybody shares what comes out on the board. And so you bet as soon as you get your whole cards before you get the flop. And it's a very common strategy to bet very aggressively at the hole to try to push other people off of the pot. And that's fine. That's a viable strategy. It's just that nobody's going to fold in a trial. It's not like you're going to successfully push Johnny Depp off of his case because you went in very aggressively in your opening statement. And so the problem is going to be they actually have very weak cards, and that is going to emerge as the case unfolds and more and more of the evidence becomes available. And so the weakness of their case is it's going to come back and bite them because the jury has now been primed to expect a lot from them that they're not going to get. And so when we're on week 6, looking back at, if I were doing a closing argument in this case, I mean, I can tell you already, I would be reminding the jury of exactly what they told you in opening statement the evidence was going to be. And now here's what the evidence actually is, because that just shows you can't trust them. They're not here to give you a fair and realistic account of what the evidence is and what the facts are. So it's just really, it was a really big gamble on their part that I don't think is ultimately going to pay off.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you just a real quick question about the Marilyn Manson case. Do you, we haven't heard anything from Ilma Gore or Evan Rachel Wood. They haven't filed anything, right? In response to his law.
Yes.
And so let's see, it's been a little while now. I'm just curious, I guess we're waiting for them to be subpoenaed. And then after that, you said they've got 30 days to respond. Is that right?
Yeah, so they have to be served. They have to be served with a copy of the complaint and a summons that basically tells them, you've been sued and you have this amount of time to answer, or you're going to be defaulted. So we don't know if they've been served. I haven't checked this week. I've been a little bit distracted by other things. But as far as we know, last time I looked, there's no proof of service that's been filed. So we don't know if that 30-day timeline has begun to run yet. But yes, once they get served, then they're going to have 30 days to answer, and we'll see what.
Would you say that as when this thing finally comes to fruition, and let's say that we finally get down to a trial in the Manson case, would these two women be in court with Manson? Is he going to be suing both of them at the same time, or would they have separate trials? How would that work? Oh
no, he sued them. He sued them together. He's seeking joint and several liability, basically, that they conspired. This was a joint undertaking by both of them, so they're both responsible for the consequences.
So would we see them, hypothetically speaking, both sitting together at the same table even after their relationship is dissolved? Would they? Is that how it works?
Hypothetically, I mean, they might get separate tables, but they're going to both be on this side of the courtroom, and Marilyn is going to be on the other side of the courtroom. This is what we've been talking about from day one on this, is the prisoner's dilemma problem. That's the issue when you commit crimes with co-conspirators, is that when it's time to save your own skin, you're gonna toss that other person, in front of the bus to save yourself. So, that may make them uncomfortable when it gets to trial time, but that's just the consequence of committing these acts in concert.
One last thing. Do you think that, what do you think of Amber's side bringing Marilyn Manson into this? He was mentioned whose opening statement was it? It wasn't Elaine.
Yeah, it was Elaine's. Yeah, she was talking about a drug binge. She went on a big drug binge with Marilyn Manson at some point. You know, we already know that for Amber, this entire case is about the smear. And so most people are not yet aware of the travesty of these accusations against Marilyn Manson. You know, he's one of those people that he's in a tough spot because his entire persona is really based around people having this negative reaction.
Right.
That's the point. That's
right.
his art. That's what he's doing. And
well, then there's hope for Amber Heard after this. She should just lean into the negative perception of her, and then just become like a female Marilyn Manson.
Well, you know, in the WWE, they call this person the heel, and everybody loves the heel. The heel, you know, sells massive fights because everyone wants to see him get their ass kicked. So, yeah, if she would just lean into the villain role, she could potentially be very successful when this is all said and done.
Maybe that's her strategy in wearing the Gestapo suits. She's like, well, I'm already going to lose this, so I'm going to start building this image.
It's funny that you're calling it Gestapo because what I saw was Dr. Evil.
It depends on the suit. The first one looked like she was in the Navy, someone said. I don't know. I'm looking forward, I guess, to seeing 5 weeks of black suits one after another. All right. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. That was obviously a lot of really fascinating takes there. And I look forward to people seeing this conversation. And we'll talk again next week.
Let's do it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. That was great. So I will be in touch soon, and we'll talk soon.